It's June 22nd here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with President Yoon Suk-yeol wrapping up his BIE visit. His last day at the official reception in Paris was, again, all about endorsing Busan as the 2030 World Expo host. Yoon is now headed for Hanoi for his Vietnam state visit. More U.S. rate hikes are on the way within the year, as the fight against inflation still has a long way to go. That's according to the U.S. Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Kia America, Samsung, and SK Group have made it onto Time Magazine's annual list of 100 most influential companies. In fact, Kia America's unexpected race to the top of U.S. EV sales has also been acknowledged. On his final day in Paris, President Yoon Suk-yeol declared his Paris Initiative. Now, that is detailing how basic principles that the world should adopt to secure a new digital order. Our top office correspondent, Oh Soo-young reports.
President Yoon Suk-yeol has proposed a new global body and a universal set of norms for digital development to ensure that the freedom and welfare of people around the world are not harmed by technology. The South Korean leader announced his Paris Initiative on Wednesday, speaking at the Sorbonne University in the French capital.
발명, 기술 개발, 예술 창작 등 사람과 AI의 콜라보를 통한 놀라운 성과를 만들어내는 한편 그 독창성의 원천과 법적 권리 관계에 관해 엄청난 혼란을 빚어내고 있습니다. 또한 그 과정과 결과에 대한 통제가 불가능해지는 중대한 사회적 리스크를 일으키기도 합니다. 그렇기 때문에 국제적으로 통용되는 보편적 디지털 질서가 중요합니다.
Given the borderless, immediate and connected nature of digital technologies, Yoon said a universal digital order is needed on a global scale. He first and foremost established that digital advancement should serve to expand human freedom, dignity and welfare. Second, Yoon noted that a clear definition of rights to digital use and assets needs to be clarified to promote active transactions and the development of data. In this regard, digital access should be open for all, with digital literacy education crucial for such efforts. Yoon called for global collaboration to bridge digital literacy gaps. Deeming data and digital information public goods, the president emphasised that fair access and equal opportunity for all should be guaranteed. He further raised the need for a fair evaluation and reward system to incentivise investments and development efforts. In order to prevent social harm, Yoon also said information on social risks must be shared and publicised promptly with a regulatory system in place. Any violation would be deemed illegal and sanctioned. Most importantly, the South Korean leader said the international community must join hands in such regulatory efforts. He proposed creating a global body to standardise and initiate such basic norms within the context of the digital economy and society. To establish the institution, he suggested United Nations organisations could lead the conversation, noting that the president was inspired by various discussions, including at the G20 Davos and the New York Digital Vision Forum last September. His economic secretary said a multilateral set of norms will continue to be developed through intellectual discourse.
It is especially meaningful that the initiative was proposed in Paris, the birthplace of the Enlightenment and the Civil Revolution.
The secretary said the president's initiative is not just limited to artificial intelligence, but can cover the entire digital spectrum and be applied universally in all countries in any stage of their digital transformation. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Paris.
And President Yoon gave one last push to tout Busan as the 2030 World Expo host at the official BIE reception on Wednesday. There, he reiterated solidarity against crises facing the world. Our Kim Do-yeon has more.
President Yoon Suk-yeol wrapped up his visit to Paris by attending the official reception for South Korea's bid to host the 2030 World Expo in Busan. A reception is held by each of the candidates competing for the expo before 179 BIE member states voted in November. The two other cities, Riyadh and Rome, hosted theirs on Monday and Tuesday respectively. President Yoon, attending with First Lady Kim Gun-hee, reiterated that the Busan Expo will be the one to unite the world to create a solution platform for global crises, which has been labeled the Busan Initiative.
기후변화, 디지털 전환, 식량, 보건, 그리고 교육 분야에서 협력 확대 방안을 모색할 것이며 모든 나라가 자신의 고유한 문화와 전통을 마음껏 표현할 수 있는 문화 엑스포를 구현할 것입니다.
Also attending the reception were prominent Korean business leaders such as Samsung Electronics Chairman Lee Jae-yong and Hyundai Motors Chung Hee-sun. Acknowledging their presence, President Yoon underscored South Korea's advanced technology and said the Busan Expo will have the most advanced technology and the world could come together to share ideas and innovation.
부산 세계 박람회에서 잉태되는 새로운 기술과 아이디어는 인류의 지속 가능한 발전, 국제사회의 번영에 기여할 것입니다.
According to the top office, as President Yoon was meeting with attendees, he heard good responses regarding the presentation at the General Assembly. Prior to this reception, President Yoon also attended a ceremony for investing by European companies into South Korea. There, 6 high-tech European companies pledged $940 million of investment into South Korea. The companies include Imerys, a French battery solution manufacturer, Umicore, a Belgian cathodes company, and Continental, a German auto parts company. They're expected to build production facilities, R&D centers, and wind power plants in South Korea. President Yoon vowed to support them during the process.
글로벌 스탠다드에 맞지 않는 규제는 과감하게 철폐하고 첨단 산업과 공급망 안정에 기여하는 기업에게는 확실한 인센티브를 제공하겠습니다. 투자 과정에서 필요한 지원이나 어려움이 있으면 언제든지 저와 한국 정부에 말씀해 주시기 바랍니다.
According to the top office, with this latest investment commitment, South Korea has now gained $16.5 billion in overseas investment in the first half of this year, the most ever for the same period. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And the South Korean leader is now headed to Vietnam for his state visit, which begins Thursday morning. For his trip to South Korea's third biggest trading partner, Yoon will be accompanied by a 205-member business delegation, the largest ever for an overseas presidential visit. The official welcoming ceremony, summit, and state dinner will be held on Friday, hosted by Vietnamese President Vo Van Trong. The leaders are expected to discuss expanding bilateral ties, which were upgraded to a comprehensive strategic partnership last December. Yoon will also meet with high-profile politicians, as well as business leaders and overseas Koreans while there. Workers are more stressed than ever. In fact, stress in the workplace reached an all-time high last year for the second straight year. Why? What's responsible for this uneasy feeling? Today, we're joined by Professor Sun-mi Hwang. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Sure. So, according to Gallup's latest State of Global Workplace report, stress in the workplace reached an all-time high last year for the second straight year. Why such depressing figures for 2 years in a row?
Oh, in the last 2 years, we had a COVID-19 pandemic and we still have it. That means many of us survived from global financial difficulties, the fear of job losses, and also we had to adapt to the sudden changes to online working environment as we are doing right now. These situational reasons could add to the stress for the last 2 years. But difficulties at work have always been an important stress for people, which means work is a really important matter to human beings. We tend to be sensitive to problems that we consider are most valuable to us. Workplace stress is a typical example, as well as family relationships. We all want to express ourselves from work and we want to achieve from it. These can improve us and at the same time, it can stress us out.
Right, we do spend much of our time at work, not in our bed. So that's definitely the reason why. And also pandemic has played a crucial role in really upgrading that stress level, right?
Right.
Then let's talk about it by region. Workers in North America and East Asia were particularly more stressed, and stress among people in Turkey was the highest. And the stress level here in South Korea came to 40, which is slightly lower than the global average. Let's talk about these figures.
I also read Gallup's latest findings, and what was interesting for me was that North America and East Asia had both high stress level and high employee engagement at the same time. Of course, high is a relative term compared to other regions. Employment engagement in Europe and Central Asia was 13% and 15% respectively, while North America was 31% and South Asia was 33%. The engaged level in East Asia, including Korea, was also higher than in Europe. Of course, the exact correlation between the two variables can only be found when research is done, but there seems to be some effect between workplace-oriented culture and work-related stress. And of course, differences in welfare levels between countries will be another impact.
Right, definitely. Maybe the hours that we here in Korea spend at work has definitely played a role in that stress level, maybe.
I think so, yes.
Now that you've mentioned the work engagement, only 23% of workers around the world say they are engaged in their work, meaning they're dedicated and focused on their job. Then why high stress and low work engagement?
Yes, we really need to look at this issue deeply and seriously, I think. I think it's the right time to redefine the concepts involved in work. Work is important to people, and this fact is not going to change. However, the commonly used concepts in work psychology, such as job, aptitude, career, value, these are all changing. For example, in traditional workplace, the roles of employers and employees were fixed, but now there are more people working alone. So let's say when we call a person a low engaged worker, it can mean that he's less committed to the job he's hired for, but he could be committed to his newly defined career. I believe we live at a historical moment to go beyond the traditional concept of work, and we need to consider which activities we should call work or workplaces.
Right. Concepts and definitions of work and workplaces are constantly evolving, especially after the pandemic years.
Yeah, I really agree to that to you.
Is work stress something that we have to live with for the entire life? I mean, how can we as individuals manage all the stress, tension, and the pressure in daily settings?
I worked as a team manager in the startup's in-house counseling service before. And what I realized back then is that most people want to do their job well and want to be recognized by others. We all do that. That's why it causes us pain when work doesn't go well. And if we call this pain of work work stresses, then yes, I agree that work stress is something we have to live with. As a mental health professional, one tip I can offer is that we better to distinguish whether workplace stress comes from a company's systematic problems or from personal characteristics, because we often confuse those two. Recently, many companies have set up counseling services to create a supportive working environment. And I hope there will be more such workplaces, because employees can feel secure and protected when they know that company really cares about their personal feeling and their personal difficulties. And I've witnessed it through many cases that this sense of security can really actually reduce stress level and increase productivity at work.
Right, maybe defining and dissecting the origin of the stress that we get from the workplace may be one way to get to know about our stress and maybe lift the burden off at work.
Sure, sure.
All right, Professor Huang, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks for having me again. Thank you.
Just when we thought we were nearing the end of the U.S. rate hike cycle, the Fed chief signals that there could be more hikes this year. Now, that is simply because the fight against inflation is not yet over. Kim Hyun-sung reports.
More Fed rate hikes are to be expected in the future. That's what Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell hinted at his testimony before the House Financial Services Committee on Wednesday.
Inflation pressures continue to run high, and the process of getting inflation back down to 2% has a long way to go.
His words came just a week after the Fed's brief pause on one of the most hawkish rate hiking campaigns in history. 10 straight rate hikes, non-stop, from March 2022. Right now, the Fed rate hike stands at 5.25%. However, on Wednesday, Powell made clear that this was not a pivot, but just a cool down in speed.
It may make sense to move rates higher, but to do so at a more moderate pace.
He said that while there were signs of slight improvement in the labor market, there was still an imbalance of labor demand exceeding the supply of workers. Also, inflation still hovers high above the target 2%, with total personal consumption expenditures rising 4.4% for the year ending in April. Powell said that it could take some time for the full effects of the Fed's monetary tightening policies to trickle down through the economy. The latest projections from the majority of Fed officials suggest there to be at least 2 more rate hikes this year, which would push rates to a 22-year high. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
Time magazine is out with its 100 most influential companies list for 2023. And Kia America has been listed in the innovators category for its unexpected race to the top of EV sales in the U.S. Lee Eun-jin has the details.
Every year since 2021, Time magazine releases its annual list of 100 most influential companies split in 5 categories: leaders, disruptors, innovators, titans, and pioneers. And for the 2023 list, 3 South Korean companies have made it onto the top 100. Samsung and SK Group were listed under the titans category as smartphone trendsetters and battery makers. And Kia America made it to the top of the list in the innovators category for its unexpected race to the top of the U.S. electric vehicle sales. Kia vehicles have a new reputation. Kia America President and CEO Yoon said during an interview with Time magazine that people are surprised when they get into a Kia vehicle because it's not the Kia they remember. In 2022, 60% of its customers were new to the brand. Tesla still holds pole position in U.S. electric vehicle sales, but Kia America shed its reputation for inexpensive cars and hit a new annual sales record in 2022 with its launch of the EV6 crossover, which took the brand into second place in EV sales for most of the year in the U.S. Kia America has been harmed by last year's Inflation Reduction Act, which requires EVs to be assembled in North America in order to qualify for tax credits. But CEO Yoon says the company is gradually overcoming the challenge thanks to the tax credits offered for leasing. To stay in the race for U.S. electric vehicle dominance, Kia is planning to begin production of their newest EV, the EV9, in West Point, Georgia next year. 15 EV models are planned for Kia's global lineup by 2027. Lee Eun-jin, Arirang News.
Seoul City aims to become the world's largest startup hub. Mayor Oh Se-hoon on Wednesday announced a $1.3 billion spending package that aims to foster at least 50 unicorn companies by the year 2030. Now, unicorn meaning startups that eventually become worth $1 billion. The plan will see around 1,000 new firms accommodated in the Seongsu-dong neighborhood in East Seoul, an area that's popular for new and upcoming companies. The city is also planning to build a robot cluster to develop startups in what are called future industries.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in the North Atlantic Ocean. The rescue operation for the missing submersible taking tourists to the wreckage of the Titanic has reported hearing banging sounds. Now, the sounds were detected on Tuesday and Wednesday, but the source has not been confirmed. It's a race against time to find the submersible, as it's believed that the 5 people on board have less than 12 hours of oxygen remaining. The search operation is now covering a surface area twice the size of the U.S. state of Connecticut. But operations are challenging due to the remote search area. The Titanic lies 600 kilometers off the coast of Newfoundland and almost 4 kilometers below the ocean's surface. Now, OceanGate, the firm behind the Titanic trip, was previously warned by a former employee that its experimental vessel could face catastrophic problems. Turning over to Paris, at least 37 people have been injured following an explosion on Wednesday in a building close to the French capital's Latin Quarter. 4 of the injured are in serious condition. Search operations are also underway for 2 people believed to be missing beneath the rubble. Hundreds of firefighters have been deployed to the area and have extinguished a fire resulting from the blast. The cause of the explosion is still being investigated, but it's believed to have been caused by a gas leak. To Honduras now, at least 46 women have been killed during a riot at a women's prison about 25 kilometers from the country's capital. According to local authorities, Tuesday's riot was a gang-led response to efforts to crack down on corruption in the prison. Most of those killed were burned to death, as gang members reportedly went to cells of rivals and locked them in before dousing them with a flammable liquid. Others were shot or hacked to death with machetes. Some of the bodies are still being identified. Honduran President Xiomara Castro said the riot was planned by gangs and that guards at the 900-person penitentiary had known it would take place. And finally, yoga enthusiasts around the world celebrated International Day of Yoga on Wednesday. In Times Square, over 8,000 people took part in a program called Mind Over Madness Yoga. The day also saw people across India practice the meditative exercise on aircraft carriers, in the mountains and on trains. Observed every year on June 21st, International Day of Yoga was adopted by the United Nations in 2014. The day was even observed by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who was at the UN in New York while on a state visit to the United States. Yoga is a physical, mental and spiritual practice that started in India over 5,000 years ago.
Good morning. After some very welcomed relief from the heat yesterday, temperatures are set to rise again. Readings will go up about 5 degrees higher today here in the capital. Then sweltering heat is in the forecast to end the week and into the weekend. Now, sunny skies to start out the day, then mostly cloudy skies with scattered rain showers expected during the day with thunderstorms and hail at times, with up to 40 millimeters of rain in the forecast. While the capital region looks like receiving showers after lunchtime. Jeju and South Coast regions will be under sunnier skies with stronger UV rays today. And also it's Tano today, considered to be one of the major traditional holidays. And on this day, farmers got to have a short break after rice planting and also wish for a fruitful harvest. Meanwhile, afternoon highs will be 4 to 7 degrees higher than yesterday in most parts of the country. Now, monsoon rain is forecasted on Sunday on the south coast and Jeju Island, and the whole nation will be affected by a monsoonal front early next week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That wraps up our Thursday edition of New Day at Arirang. Thank you for watching.